All right, all right, all right. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, sickos and normies. Welcome back to the Landy Lodge, where today we're talking Final Fantasy 16, and we got a great guest lined up for you today. But before we get into that, let's just give a shout out to the sages of the lodge right over here. Those who donate as little as $1 a month to keep my nonsense going. They're worth the shout out, they're worth the love, and I love them all. And I love all you who are chilling here. But without further ado, without further delay, Kai, dude, thank you so much for joining us again. How you doing, dude?
I'm a little sick, but I'm gonna manage. What's up, everybody? How you guys doing?
You're a sicko. I guess that's your way of fitting in here today.
Yeah.
But dude, thanks for agreeing to do this. One of the reasons I wanted to have you in is, you make a lot of Final Fantasy content yourself. And, I'm gonna be very, very upfront. I'm simping hard for FF16. You're a little bit more skeptical and critical. And that's why I wanted you to bring you. That's why I wanted to bring you in here, because I can't
Yeah.
just be in here gassing up FF16. I guess what I would say is, what is your I guess your general impression of 16, and has it changed at all in the last 6 months?
All right. So this might be stretching it. So initially, when I saw the trailer for 16 back in 2020, I was like, "Yes, a new Final Fantasy!" Right?
Mm-hmm.
But then I was like, wait a minute, PS5, right?" And
Mm-hmm.
like, I haven't played Remake at that point yet, or like a lot. So I was just like really critical. I was like, it don't really look like next gen because it said PS5.
Mm-hmm.
But then I was like, maybe it changed because then I read like they didn't like spruce it up and make it. So I just let it go. I was like, you know what? I'll wait till more stuff come out. I kept looking at the trailer occasionally, and then when we got the second trailer, this is when like everybody probably is like, oh no, boo, 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 his opinion. I watched it and I was just like, I, I don't know. I just felt kind of like ah. So I just remember watching that trailer, being a little more critical. I was on live stream at that point in time, but then when I sat and watched it again, I was like, it's not that bad. You know, I'll play the game, but I really was critical since day one about the graphics. Because I felt like, all right, it's a PS5 game, so it's definitely gonna look PS5. And
Mm-hmm.
even comparing like some aspects of like the older Final Fantasy games, I was definitely looking at how the characters were modeled, and I've been critical about that. I like it. The faces just seem like they could have used some touching up and some other things. I like the costumes. I like the effects, and I think the environment looks nice. But it's just certain things I felt needed to get touched up. Then we got that third trailer. I felt more or less the same, but like I was a little more confident that okay, I could play this game, and I was like, you know what, I need to see another trailer. So then when we got the last trailer at the Game Awards, I remember I watched it and I didn't feel like yeah, the face thing was still kind of there, but it was the first time I felt like you know what, I need to pre-order this game, and I'm gonna be on the lookout for this. So I went to GameStop as soon as I could. I pre-ordered not the regular, but I think the next edition after that.
Like the
And
definitive,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, that edition, and I'll be waiting in June, and I'll go pick it up at GameStop. So I'm excited for the game, but I still have my criticisms
I,
because
I get that. I get that.
and I don't want to make this about Legend of Zelda, but when I first played the Wind Waker, I felt the same way. I'm like, what are these graphics? This
Mm-hmm.
is not how Link's supposed to look. He's supposed to look like strong. I hated the graphics of Wind Waker, but as I played it, that went out the window.
Because
So
now you feel it. Now you get to, like, you're the
yeah,
one moving it, and it feels natural.
yeah. So I feel as though that I have to get in the game in my hands, and once I get a feeling of it, then I'll be like good to go. Like heck, even Stranger of Paradise, I was a little skeptic, but I was on more on the
Mm-hmm.
positive side of that game. But it was only when I played the demo, like the first and second time, where I was really like, "Yo, this game about to be fire." I played through that game, beat that game in like 8 days. So it really it really depends on how the game feels. Like Stranger of Paradise felt like it felt fantastic. felt like a
It
action
did.
version of
It did.
Tactics where you had all these different jobs and you could do a bunch of crazy things. So if the gameplay is phenomenal, then the looks, while I might meme it occasionally, it's going to it's not going to matter in the most part. Graphics is just something that I noticed first, but the gameplay is likely going to be the thing that gets me like excited and really going forward to play the game.
Honestly, and maybe this is something that's kind of helped my perception of FF16. And don't get me wrong, I think graphics and visual aesthetics are very important, but it might be fourth on my list. Like for me with video games, like gameplay is first and foremost, like story and characters come second, and I think I might even put soundtrack before visual aesthetics, and then I would put like graphics and stuff like that. You know, but at least for me, I kind like the first two trailers, I felt very much the same way you did. Where I was like, wait, this is
Yeah,
supposed to be PS5. Why doesn't it look as good as like Remake? Now
yeah,
Remake wasn't a perfect looking game, but you could see that the money went into the character models, like and
yeah,
those graphics and textures. Uh,
yeah,
but like you were saying, the faces were kind of throwing me off a little bit. I was like, there's something not as alive as these. Whereas I
yeah,
should feel like that, oh, that liveliness and authenticity that I felt in Remake's facial expressions, um, with this being a PS5 game, I want to feel them even more. Um,
yeah.
and then that third trailer came out that had me feeling more confident, that made me go, okay, now I'm definitely a day one guy. Because I was always going to buy this game. I was always going to play this game. But it took until the third trailer for me to go, okay, I'm day one.
Yeah.
And then right around when they dropped that third trailer, they at the same time said like, yeah, the game's 95% done, but we want to spend the next 6 to 12 months patching the vision, like patching it and like patching up the
Yeah.
visuals and stuff like that. And I was like, do you really need that much time? But then seeing those 6 months go by, seeing that latest Final Fantasy trailer, I suddenly went, oh, I get it
Oh,
now. Because now the game, it looks as colorful as a Final Fantasy game should look. It still carries that more brutish, dark overtone, which I do think is something, and this is something else that has me really excited for the game. I think it's something the Final Fantasy series needs. And like this M rating, and maybe we can get into that a little bit, that is exactly what the series needs. Because look, like Final Fantasy 15 is the latest entry in the series. It's it wasn't Creative Business Unit 1, which is where
yeah.
Nomura, Katase, and Nojima are, but it had their footprint. So
Yeah.
I understand why for a lot of people that game felt off, because it's like the people that crafted the like mannequin weren't the ones who finished the project up at the end of the day, if that makes sense. Um, but I feel like they really need a strong mainline entry. And you know me, I simp for Final Fantasy 14, but there's no fronting for the fact that when that game first came out, it was a bust. There's no fronting for that.
Yeah.
So what they really need is a non quote unquote Nomura-ish Final Fantasy to really slap out the gate. Like 14 is an achievement. Nobody would take that away from Final Fantasy 14. But the series is in desperate need of a hit out the gate. I think Final Fantasy Time, excuse me. I think Final Fantasy X is the last time they've released a game that was just universally beloved out the gate. Like I think that's the last time they really pulled it off. 11, while it was successful, was very mixed at first. 12, is still mixed to this day. 13, don't even get people started. 14 fumbled for the first few years and then got it together. And then 15, the same idea. They kind of fumbled out the gate, but now the Royal Edition is like a perfect version of that game. 16 really needs to absolutely nail it on day one. It can't be, oh, here's the day one version of the game, and then a year later, now it's the game it was meant to be. I feel like so desperately, this just needs to be a home run out the gate.
Yeah. No, no, definitely. Because the one thing I do like about um Yoshida is that he's giving people confidence where he's like, we're not gonna like have a bunch of post game stuff where you need it in order to get the full story. And I feels like he's been saying the right things to give people confidence that this will be the game to be complete. have a good story,
Yep.
you're gonna have good combat, and even gave the people who don't like action combat confidence, saying like, "Hey, look, there's gonna be a casual mode, so even if you're not that great at action games, this game will still be for you." And the one thing I know the people who play 14, look, I got too much stuff on my plate. I don't got time for MMOs like that. When I do, I barely have time for the one I play. But I know the people who play those games speak highly about the story. I'll see content creators speak about 14, and I'm like, is it really that good?
Bro, it
Maybe one of
is.
these
It
days
freaking
when I
is,
have more
man.
time, I'll try it out. But I'll see it, and I'm always like curious. Like I'll speak my piece like, oh, it looks like this, but it's like again, if the story's fire, at least I want to experience it. And so I definitely do appreciate the approach that's been taken with 16. And like you said, if you look at it since 10, all the games that have come out has had some issue. And it's crazy to think that
Like, yeah,
it
because it's 20 years, dude.
yeah,
Like, it's not a short amount of
yeah,
time. Like, we're talking about 2 decades that Square Enix
yeah.
really has not dropped a universally beloved game out of the gate. And again, save for 14, it's most certainly universally beloved now. It's one of the biggest games in the whole world, and in my opinion, rightfully so. But it's just crazy to think about that. It's really been 20 years since they really pulled that off, and I think it's a must this time around. I'll speak on behalf of Final Fantasy XIV. I think it's one of the strongest stories in the series. However, that really takes until you get to Shadowbringers. You could look at it as like there's three major. Every main campaign in 14 is basically its own Final Fantasy game. So Final Fantasy
Yeah.
14 is like 5 or 6 Final Fantasy games at this point. And it takes until about the third or fourth one for it to become an all-time great. The first 3 campaigns or so, main campaigns, are, I don't want to say run of the mill, but are your average Final Fantasy experience. I would compare it to the likes of 15, or maybe to the likes of maybe even Final Fantasy 8. I really like Final Fantasy 8, not hating on it. Really like Final Fantasy 15, not hating on it. But those are very, to me,
Yeah.
like in the middle. If you're going to rank the all-time best, games like 15, 8, and the first few campaigns of 14 would come in right at the middle for me. That would just be my
Hmm.
opinion, though.
All right. Dang. I mean, you know how I feel about the favorite Final Fantasy game. It's ironic. I was playing a little bit of it until I got distracted at work.
Well, I wanted to ask you. Obviously, you talk about Final Fantasy 9, but how do you feel about this being like the first, like, I don't want to say real return to the fantasy element, but definitely the heaviest fantasy influence we've seen probably since Final Fantasy 9.
Yeah, so for me, yeah, like Final Fantasy 9 is probably the most played Final Fantasy game of the olden times. And then I didn't play 10 right after 9 because I didn't have a PlayStation 2 of my own.
Mm-hmm.
So really the next Final Fantasy game I got to experience after 9 was 13, like 10 years later. And I played 13 and I didn't like 13 at first because I didn't really understand the story and I sucked at the combat, but through
Mm-hmm.
playing it, got really good. And I was like, I kind of like the sci-fi setting.
Mm-hmm.
I also like I was never like super in love with the medieval setting, but it didn't bother me. The knights and the swords, I will admit, it's not really my favorite aesthetic. I don't know. My favorite aesthetic is like that, like more so like that medieval Japan, like that.
Mm.
I forget what era, the Edo era, maybe
Yeah, the
like where
Edo, the Edo period.
they got the katanas, they got the
Mm-hmm.
samurai, the ninja, kind of that stuff. I probably said like 3 different eras, but that's more of my favorite aesthetic if we're getting to like the swords and stuff. The knights and armors, it really depends, but that's not gonna stop me from enjoying 16. So when I heard that it's going back to the fantasy, the one thing I did like was the whole aspect about the crystals, because I know in 9, if anyone has ever played 9, it deals with that aspect in that game. So it is interesting to hear about a game going back to that concept after such a long time.
Yeah, and It seems like in a lot of ways, Final Fantasy 16 is like it feels like a love letter to the Final Fantasy lore. Like to the point that summons, I feel like without even knowing much about 16 yet, I feel like you can already make an argument that summons are going to be more important in this game than any other game before. The only one I could really compare it to is 10. There are a lot of games that
Yeah,
really kind of put the summons on the periphery. Like 7, Final Fantasy 7 is an example of that, in my opinion. But this is putting summons front and center, like
yeah,
really front and center. Like for the first time, in my opinion, and say for I'm not someone who's played Final Fantasy 11, but I have played 12 through 15, really for the
yeah.
first time since 10.
Hmm.
Like there's a summoner class in FF14, but it's not. I mean, but you have the. I mean, you have primals in FF14, which are
Yeah,
important, but not to the point that like in FF16 where you're gonna have main characters transforming into the summon seemingly, or having some kind
yeah,
of like back and forth relationship with them.
yeah. I just actually thought about something, right? So, have you ever watched Digimon growing up?
Here and there. I was a little freaking brat, man. I felt like Digimon was competing with Pokemon, so I was like, nah, get that shit out of here. Get the shit out of here.
Man. So I was gonna say,
I was a
so
little
there was
fucker.
the fourth season of Digimon. I forget what the official name was, but they basically would transform into the Digimons. So
Damn.
again, I didn't like the idea at first because I'm like, why did he turn into the Digimon? They supposed to be like their companion and
Mhm.
whatnot. But then like watching it, it really got interesting in how they went about it.
Mhm.
And towards the end, it really got crazy because they like gave their powers to like the main two characters. And I don't know, just like we're talking about this, I just thought about that. Like, what if that's what's happening with Clive, where they're giving him the powers because he has like a greater purpose that he's going to meet, and we find that out as you're playing his story in the game.
Mhm. You know what I almost see it as? If you ever played Persona,
I've seen it here and there.
it almost kind of feels like they're summoning their persona. Because they have to like call them forth, just like in Persona, and they kind of become this battle companion where like it's the source of all their power. Like
Yeah.
they don't unlock their anime powers until they unlock their persona. So I wonder if that's going to be a similar case in 16. I have to say,
Yeah.
because I really do love it when they mix it up. I do. Like I love the story changes in Remake. I mean, they could always fumble it in the next entries, but I like the ballsy move. I like the ballsy move. It looks like we're gonna get to like actually play action as summons, like actually have summon action combat. It looks like that there might be the potential for that. Like maybe it's all just a cutscene, right? That you unlock when you summon Ifrit, but like it seems to imply that you may get to like fight as Ifrit. I don't know. Were you
Yeah.
getting the same impression?
So yeah, from what I saw in the trailers, it looks as though that you'll be able to control them in like I guess like an arena like setting,
Yeah.
and you'll have different combos that you can dish out. I don't think it'd be as robust as when like you're in human form, but I think it'd
Right.
be good enough to where you're going at it with the other the monster. I
Yeah.
was about to say kaiju.
Dude, it's funny. I've been calling them kaiju. Like when I talk to people, I'm like, yeah, we got kaiju battles now.
Yeah.
We're doing it. We're doing it. Yeah, there's Sunline in the chat saying kaiju fights. Let's go for it. Like that's what I mean. Is like we have these summons. Like that's one thing I do love about the Final Fantasy series is that even though each story is its own unique thing, there is a consistent underlying lore, right? Like you have these
Yeah.
summons, you have materia, you have Moogles and Chocobos and Cactuars and
Yeah.
Carbuncles. There's always this like base level lore that they all share. And I think what's really drawing me to 16 is they want to take that base level lore and almost seemingly orbit the story around it. Like
Yeah.
that's what's really compelling me because I'm not sure if Final Fantasy series has really done that in a long time. But I don't know. I don't know. Again, I didn't play 11, so again,
Yeah.
I'm completely ignorant as to what that game contains. Okay, I'm being a little bit corrected in the chat. I left out the Tom berries. Excuse me, I left out the tomberries and the. I hate this.
Yeah.
Are they pronounced pew pews or poo poo? I never know.
I'm the wrong person to
Wrong
ask.
person to ask. I never. I've been calling them pew pews, but deep down in
Pew
my heart, I
pew.
feel like I know they're poo poos. Anyway, anyway. So you laid out some of the things that you have been, critical of FF16. What are in particular the things that have you excited to play the game?
So when I heard that the game was gonna have a combat more in line of like Devil May Cry,
Hmm.
I've I've seen Devil May Cry gameplay. Heck, I even bought Devil May Cry for anticipation of 16, so that
Really?
way I can get an idea of how the gameplay is. It's in my backlog, so
Hmm.
eventually I'm gonna play it. So I'm excited for the gameplay aspect of 16. I also before they told us, I was excited for the party members, but even though we won't be able to play with a large bunch of people, I'm still excited of the interactions because we like haven't seen like Clive fully interact with these people and how he is as a person.
Correct.
Like right now, he's still mysterious, so I definitely want to see what's going on with him. I want to see like I guess the political side of things in these kingdoms because this Final Fantasy is really giving like a moral and ethical type of like questioning like stuff like hey is this right to do
You're
like
it's all
killing
over
people.
14. I just
Yeah.
want to let you know all that's so 14. That's why I love. But go on. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, yeah, so I want to see how that plays out because for me, I won't always say like, oh yeah, I like the political aspect and like how things play out, but every now and again I'll let it slip because there were TV shows. I don't know if you ever saw the show called The 100, but
No.
it essentially at some point it became like a show where they're surviving and they're doing things that like ethically would have been wrong in like a regular world setting.
Mm-hmm.
More they're getting rid of their morals for survival. And I feel as though that in 16 they're going to be doing the same thing where they're throwing their morals out for their own greater good.
Like
And
Machiavellian style. Yeah.
so I definitely want to see how that plays out in this game. And then I guess because like every Final Fantasy, the joke is that there's a villain and then there's a final villain that you don't see until the very end.
The Uno reverse card.
Yeah, so
Just
I want to
waiting.
see if that's implemented in this game too.
You know what's funny? I actually think it's one of the reasons FF7 is so beloved is because they actually didn't do that. Like
Yeah,
Sephiroth is actually your final boss in FF7, and I think a lot of people appreciated that. Um, but anyway, yeah, no, I agree with you. That sort of moral ambiguity or calling morality into question, that's definitely coming to FF16. And FF14 is a game that has a lot of that sort of like, let's call it political developments. There's a lot of those things drawn in, and you see how it changes by nation. And they don't propose anything as right and wrong. What they do is they just give you the perspective of certain nations or certain collectives and why they're doing what they do. And even if you don't end up agreeing with them, it has a very nuanced way of laying it out to you that you understand why those characters, that village, or that nation may be acting in the way that they are. Because I love it when stories do that. I love it when stories do that kind of stuff. I'm not looking for it to reflect real world politics at all. That's not what I.
yeah,
That's not what I go there for. But to be clear, I definitely do like it when it plays with the politics of its own world. Like
yeah.
that stuff to me. And in a way, that's in that reflection you can kind of have that. But that's really the kind of stuff I look for. I will say one thing I was really skeptical of until we saw it was I was going to be a little jaded if we didn't really have a party. To me, Final Fantasy has
Yeah,
always been about having the party. Now, I love the idea we're really only going to have one playable character. They said there's two in all, but for the most part, it seems like we're going to be controlling one character at a time. I like that because while you're running this alongside the remake trilogy, which has a combat function where you are going to be constantly rotating between party
yeah,
members, this is a great way to differentiate itself and be like, no, 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 no. we're putting all of the budget, all of the best minds and like engineers into this one or two characters combats to really give like that the most like full experience that they can. That and the fact that we got a dog in the party, that did it for me. I was like, let's go, baby. First one since Angelo. So I'm excited for that.
For me, I was also kind of on the fence when the party thing was like, yeah, he's the only person in the party. Because for me, I remember when 13.2 first got announced, because I eventually fell in love with 13. 13.2 got announced, and I was like, yo, I can't wait to play with Hope. I can't play all these guys from the original game.
Mm-hmm.
And then you find out there's only two playable characters, and then the rest are the monsters. I'm like, what is this? But eventually I played the game and I was like, you know what? I like 13.2 as well.
I
So
never played 13 too, man. I played 13, but I never made it through the trilogy. Have you played
yeah.
Lightning Returns as well?
So I will be honest, 13 and 13.2, they're not incredibly hard, but for me, I guess there's a learning curve. Like I couldn't enjoy it because it was hard for me. So I never got through it.
Yeah.
I played it, but I never got through it.
See, I made it through 13. It took me a couple tries because I tried it once when it first came out, and I was like 13, something like that. And it was just I didn't understand the combat because it was so different than anything I had played, at least Final Fantasy wise. Because for me, I didn't get to play Final Fantasy 12 until recently. So the last game
Yeah.
I had played was 10, which was like all turn based, all like straight up RPG. And then we do 13, where it's like everything was different. People are changing classes between Saboteur and this, and I could not figure it out. But when I came back to it when I was in college, I found I actually really enjoyed 13's combat, and it's very different from the rest of the series. That's actually kind of what I like about it.
Yeah, and like sometimes I'll play 13 and I'm like, wow, I can do this. It's like
Hmm.
once you understand the combat of that game, it's just like a whole nother level of, oh my goodness, I could enjoy this game on this level. And
Yep.
doing things that you're not supposed to do or doing it in a different way is fun. Cause like if you I bought well, I got the guidebook from my friend and I followed that and I just listened to the guidebook. But then
Hmm.
after a while, I'm like, I don't like how it says this. I learned a better way of doing things through either research or just experimenting on my own. So 13, it it was a but then it became a yes, yes, yes. And like I didn't like how everybody called it the press X to win game, because I watched somebody on stream play that game and she could not win. It took her a couple times to get through the final boss.
It's dude that Final Fantasy always notoriously jacks up the final boss. 13 was another monster. Like that is like 9 notoriously's final boss, at least for me, is always tough to get through. Um, but 13 was it took me a long while. I remember I actually in college, I was so eager to see the final cutscene that after failing for probably what was the 86th time, I was like, you know what? I'm going to take the pressure off. I'm just going to watch the final cutscenes so I have the story. This way, the fight won't frustrate me as more. I'll have a clearer head because, like, me knowing the story is no
Yeah.
longer dependent on my victory. And when you know it, I won the very next time I played. The very next time, I was so mad at myself. And I was like, it literally was my own like mental fog because I was like, man, if I slip up, I'm not gonna know how this ends. But I was glad to persevere through that. Uh, but yeah, man. I mean, look, it's been so long. When did 15 come out? Was that 2016? Has is
Yeah,
it?
it was 2016.
It's gonna be
And
7 years in between titles. That's insane.
you know what bothered me about 15? I was like, all right, this game is coming out. All right, I'm ready. I think it originally was supposed to come out earlier in 2016. Then they're like, it's coming out in September. Then they're like, psych, it's coming out in November. Like, stop delaying the goddamn game. And it's sad to say this, but I never got the chance to fully beat the game because by the time it finally came out, I played a little bit of it, then got busy, then life kicked my butt, and like I never got back to it.
I mean, dude,
But the
that
good news,
yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead.
but the good news is that I mean it's on PlayStation 5 as a PS Plus game.
Mhm.
So that plus the Pixel remasters, I have and I bought 8. So really the only Final Fantasies I don't have at my disposal to play is Final Fantasy 11 and 14.
The online ones make sense. 11, I'd love to play 11 someday. I feel like I know there's an offline version that you can play. I'd like to get into it one day. I feel like that might be just one of the ones I end up missing. I'd like to eventually play every entry in the series, but most of what I'm missing is like Final Fantasy 2 through 5. And I don't know. It's how do you feel going backwards in time in the Final Fantasy
So
series? Like 6 to me is still solid. I haven't played 5. 5 is I'm probably going to get the Pixel remaster for 5 and play that
yeah.
cuz that one I hear a lot of good things about.
So for me, see, I'm kind of in the middle, right?
Mhm.
Because for me, as graphics get better, you don't want to go back. But if the new game sucks, then you do want to go back. I think I've told you this, but Majora's Mask is a perfect example of this. The
Oh,
2015 3DS
oh,
version,
I'm going to mute
it was
myself.
terrible. It was terrible for me. So I went back and played the original. I'm like, yep, the original's better.
Oh, okay, no, wait, now you're speaking my language. Okay, I was afraid. I apologize. I projected an awful opinion on you. I thought you were about to be like, "Yo, Majora's was such ass." I went back and played A Link to the Past. Like that's where I thought you were going. But no, I agree with you actually, and I have felt this way. I grew up on those N64 Zeldas. I love them with all of my heart, and when those 3DS remakes, what we considered a remake at the time, when those 3DS
Yeah.
remakes were announced, I went bananas. And I got them day one, but dude, I got to be honest with you. I never finished either 3DS remake. I couldn't. I was like, it's just the same game. And to me, like, part of what made that N64 era so special were those, like, creepy polygon graphics. That's what
Yup.
makes all that stuff so creepy and eerie and gives it its atmosphere. The 3DS ones, like, smoothed them out to a point. It kind of lost a lot of its flavor. So I prefer to
Yeah.
play the N64 ones. You know, as far as Final Fantasy and now with these remasters and these remakes, I don't know. I don't know how interested I am in fresh coat of paint remasters now. Like I know we just did that with Crisis Core, but I never played
Yeah.
Crisis Core. Like I never got to
Me,
play it. So
me either.
so for me it's
Yeah.
like, oh, this is the first time I get to play it. But anytime some game just got like a fresh coat of paint style remake, it never hits for me. It just never
And
does.
I got another example of that. There is this game called Pokemon Mystery Dungeon.
Yep,
Nintendo
yep.
announced a remaster of it back in 2020, about January, and they said it was coming out in 2 months. I liked how they announced it, said it's coming out that fast. What I didn't like is that instead of just doing a simple remaster, essentially giving us the same game, which I would have been fine with, they changed the gameplay. They got rid of the basic attack, and they did a couple things, but they kept the game roughly the same. beat the game, and I was like, I don't even want to touch the post game. That was the best part about the original game. In this game, I'm like, maybe I'll come back to it. It's been 2 years plus, and I still have yet to go back to it after beating it. But it didn't sit well with me.
Now I have to admit, I kind of lost which game you were talking about. I got everything after
Uh,
you mentioned which game.
Pokemon Mystery
Mystery Dungeon,
Dungeon.
Pokemon Mystery Dungeon.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah, no, you know, my wife actually bought that game. She grew up playing it and loved it, but kind of actually had a similar experience to you. Those never do it for me. I don't know what it is, but you know, I really liked 7 Remake as someone who like the OGFF7 might as well have been my Bible when I was a teenager. So it's like I played Remake and it was like, you know what? I enjoyed that infinitely more than all of these fresh coat of paint remakes. Like, I was a huge Spyro fan growing up, and they remastered all those games and they look so beautiful, but I'm like, I played those
I
games
got
30 times already. Like, do I really need to do that again? Like, I don't
Yeah.
know.
And it's funny you mentioned Spyro because last month I went through the first two Spyro games, which oddly enough I never played on the PlayStation.
Really?
I had a fun blast playing those because I ended up like going for the 100%
They're
while
great
playing.
games.
Yeah. And I was like, even though the remaster is great, it's not like the original was terrible. It's the best way to play it.
Yeah.
Like in Spyro's case, since they didn't mess up the game too much from the original, it's fine. But when they like call it a remaster slash remake, and then it's like they change the gameplay, and it's
Mm-hmm.
like that one little thing that annoys you, that goes a long way.
Yeah, and you know what? This is why I appreciate Square Enix making their language clear.
Yeah.
To them, a remaster is yesterday's remake. What we considered a remake yesterday, Square Enix considers a remaster today. What they gave us with Crisis Core was a remaster, not a remake. What they gave us with FF7 remake was a remake. And I think, it'll be interesting to see how that affects the industry moving forward. And I wonder that, like, if they ever did remake Ocarina of Time, do they have to do it after the FF7 model? Or are they just going to try the fresh coat of paint again? My money with Nintendo would be fresh coat of paint again, but
Yeah.
it makes you think when you consider some of these other older games. Like, I know they're redoing Last of Us 2, and everyone, I know a lot of people are like, did we really need this? Like, this just happened. Or is it Last of Us 1 they're remastering? I don't know. I never played either game.
Last of Us Part 1, and they're making a TV show that comes out next month on HBO, I believe. And something tells me that's just gonna do numbers, but I didn't think that that was needed. And what confused a lot of people is that they called it a remake because they changed the gameplay, but it was still the same story. And I'm like, ah, okay, all right, maybe that's a remake to y'all, but to me, this is a remaster. Like you said, fresh coat of paint, and some things changed, but
You
it's the
didn't
same thing
remake
from
it.
before.
You didn't remake it. It's like when a studio remasters a Beatles song. They didn't remake the song. They just
Yeah.
edited it in a way that it could play better on a stereo.
Yep.
So it's like, I'm all for the change in language because I think it'll make people happier. I think they'll know what they're getting into. But bring us back to FF16.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. Have you looked into how have you been on like the website? Did you read any of the character profiles at all? Or anything like that?
So
Even if you
this
glossed
is the
them.
weird thing.
Like, I basically glossed them.
So this is the weird thing. You go to the American site for FF16, it don't give you much. You go to the Japanese website, they got the character
Yep.
information, they have the story and stuff, and I glanced over it a bit, but I'm like, all right, let me see the American version, and nothing.
Nothing.
So, from what I can tell, we have Sid, whose full name I can't pronounce. Somebody on Twitter mentioned that, like Sid from Seven, he's smoking a cigarette.
Mm.
If you see in his art, he actually has a cigarette in his hand. I thought that was cool because it's like I didn't even notice that when I first saw him.
It's a little tip of the cap, I suppose.
Yeah, and even his character is like, of all the characters I've seen so far, I think I'm more so hyped to see how Jill and Sid is more so than Clive at the moment.
Mm-hmm. I like the main party of Clive, Sid, Jill, and Torgal. I think the dog's name is. I'm all for it. It looks like a dude, his lady, his bro, and his pup. And I don't know. I vibe with that. I am a sucker for time skips. I'm a sucker.
Yeah.
I'm such a sucker for time jumps and time skips. So to see that it's like they're all gonna grow up with like happy childhood, like they're all friends, they get to know each other. Jill's gonna be like probably some girl next door. Taya's gonna be she wearing like you see in the trailer, she's wearing this nice noble dress, and Clive and Joshua, they're brothers, they're having a good time, and it just looks like it all goes to shit. And 5 years later, everyone has like a little bit of a demon in them now after all the shit they
Yeah.
went through. And there's something about that that excites me and that I can't wait to see unfold because it looks like they're all dealing with their share of either trauma or hardship. And kind of what you were bringing up before, I'm interested to see. I'm interested in seeing what behaviors or decisions they try to justify to try to sort of rectify or get over some of those hardships or trauma.
Yeah. And from what I could like make out, even looking at the first trailer, is Joshua seemed like he was sheltered from his other siblings in some ways. I guess there was like some hierarchy because the woman's like, "What did I tell you, Joshua? You like come here," and like it's almost like she's disgusted by the other siblings
Mm.
while taking Joshua away, almost
Hmm.
as if she looks down on, say, them two, because Clive was supposed to be the dominant, but he wasn't. And then Jill is from another kingdom that came in and was basically raised like their siblings. So maybe
Hmm.
she looks down on the other two, and only Joshua is special to her. Maybe that's his mom.
Could be. And now, I'm wondering about what you brought up, like that she seemed almost kind of disgusted, and maybe there's some separation between some of the brothers, and it's like maybe because you look, Clive has like a different color hair than Joshua, which it's not enough
Yeah.
to confirm anything, but like maybe Clive is like half royal blood, half peasant blood. So, and maybe he was the only choice they had. So it's like, all right, he's gonna be the dominant. But then they have Joshua, and maybe he's like a pure blood royal and he's going to be the dominant. I don't know. Part of what I love is there's not a lot that I know about this story yet, but that's an interesting observation. I wonder what that's going to lead to.
Yeah. I But because we're going through the different time jumps, I feel like they'll definitely be able to give us an ample amount of time and different like the times of Clive's life. So we'll have that. I feel like we'll spend a lot more time than what we might think we will in that aspect of Clive's life. So young Clive, right now, that's kind of like my favorite design of Clive.
Mm-hmm.
And then kind of like that middle ground where he's like, I guess, a part of that cult. I don't fully get that yet. And then I guess the later part of his life when he's like in the outfit we see in the main concept art of him. So right now, my favorite, like, or at least what I'm anticipating being my favorite part of the game is going to be like the early section of like exploring Clive and the kingdom and
Mm-hmm.
like what do they fight for.
Yeah, and honestly, I think getting that little glimpse of like Clive running into like the castle town or that sort of king, like seeing that made made it feel very on brand for Final Fantasy in a way. I don't know. I just remember seeing that one little clip of Clive running through like a castle town in the last trailer, and
Yeah,
like just that shot in particular like got me excited. You know, but I'm pretty interested in that too. Like I like the way you put that. Kind of figure out, well, okay, so we're gonna spend the early part of this game figuring out what exactly are we fighting for. What
yeah.
exactly do these characters stand for? Um, I don't know, man. So much of it is a mystery. I hope they don't unveil too much, you know?
That that's also the thing that I'm kind of liking in some ways. I mean, for content is hard, but like from like a I don't want to be spoiled is good
Yeah.
because as far as like the trailers go, they give us enough, but it's still vague to where it gets you talking.
Mm-hmm.
Because you could probably even make out that Jill and Clive were somewhat close
Mm-hmm.
just based upon how she teams up with him later, but also in the one start of the trailer, you see them casually talking, probably because Clive was probably treated a different way compared to his brother Joshua. So
Mm-hmm.
he probably spent more time around her versus his younger brother. Like maybe when he was a kid, he was like raised a certain way, but when like he got to a certain age and they're like, it's not him and it's the brother, they probably like treated him differently. And maybe he like could confined into in I can't even say words. Maybe he confided with Jill and they got close. And maybe like when like one of the trailers where you see like they're saying we're after Shiva's dominant,
Mhm.
perhaps he's only there because he suspects that it's Jill, and maybe he's already plotting to like team up with her from the get-go there. Cause
Well, I think we do
the
know that Jill is Shiva's dominant.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Interesting. Ah, so we got this going. It seems like it's gonna be a sort of like getting the band back together segment. I guess where you're
Yeah.
kind of finding old friends. I'm curious. So first of all, it's not every day, and this is something we saw in the first trailer. It's not every day you get a Final Fantasy trailer where there's blood all over a child's face.
Yeah.
I remember that being in a good way taken aback by that when I saw the first trailer, and I was like, okay, this is not Creative Business Unit 1, that is for sure. Much as I love those guys, I wish they would. They used to do more blood back in the day, and I think Remake could have benefited from some blood. But anyway, let me get back into what I was getting at. If I can remember what I was getting at. 16. Oh God, this happened to me on my. This happened to me on last night's episode too. I lost my point midpoint. But oh yeah, got it back, baby. So we see what happens to Joshua, and he seems to like take on a phoenix, right? Like he seems to take on that form and like maybe become that dominant. Um, is Clive on a quest to kill him? Because he's in that first
It,
trailer, he says like, "I'll kill you if it's the last thing I do." He says something along those lines, right? I'm not crazy remembering that.
nah, you're not crazy.
Who's he
He said that.
hunting? That's what I want to know.
So some people have said there is two Ifrits, right? There is an Ifrit and there's a dark Ifrit. I don't know if the interviews like confirmed that, but I had it in my whole head that it's like Clive got, I guess, Ifrit, but he mentions that sometimes he's not sure if he's in control or not. So maybe like when we see the two Ifrits, perhaps it's a internal struggle. Or maybe I'm wrong and there is two Ifrits and he's on a quest to kill the other Ifrit. But what I kind of was alluding to was is that so in lore, phoenixes are capable of resurrecting themselves, right?
Yes,
So I thought if Joshua's killed here, what if he didn't actually die? And
he's just a living
perhaps,
phoenix down.
yeah. And like, what if he becomes like a major piece in the story? Like, what if there's something more to it? Like, I don't want to say he ends up becoming the bad guy or something. Like, maybe it's just more to it. It's hard for me to
It's hard to
say,
speculate. It's hard to speculate.
yeah. Cause like I don't want to say the wrong thing. I made a video and I said something. Someone's like, "No, actually this," and I'm like, maybe." Like I thought I was looking
People
at
could
the
be
right
OD
thing. Oh well,
sometimes, dude. People could be OD
yeah,
sometimes. People got to know, like content creators are people too.
yeah,
Even if the content creator you like is really knowledgeable about a subject, our brains slip just like anybody else. And we'll say something
yeah.
stupid. It don't matter. But dude, I wonder because they showed that's like the first. That was like the first thing they showed us. It's almost like that incident, like that whole thing with Joshua having the blood on his face. It's almost like this is going to be that game's Nibelheim incident. Like
Yeah.
everything is going to circle that event where some like I don't know if it's going to be some like shadow society or some like operatives from a foreign nation, but like some people seem to invade a situation, knock out his protectors, and then just get him. And where it goes from there, I don't know, but
Oh, and then the other thing I noticed was is that the guy that cuts presumably Joshua's father
mhm.
is a part of their kingdom. He's wearing the same
So he's
outfit.
either a
So like,
traitor or a spy then.
yeah. So like I'm like, all right, like I definitely want to see what happens here. Cause if if they're really fighting over resources as early as this point, then definitely there was a spy of some sorts.
Oh yeah.
Ugh.
Are you good?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know you're fighting a little bit of a cold here. So let us know if you need a tissue break.
I should be good.
All right. But anyway, um, I have to really wonder. I have to really wonder if, like, like you brought up, is he just one and done? Is he gonna get killed there, transform into the Phoenix, and then they end up killing the Phoenix, or does he end up getting away, or does he end up under the control of somebody else? And like you're saying, there's obviously somebody in that situation that's a traitor or a spy, because it seems like they sort of, from the very little that we could see, it seems like they were like lured into a trap. And then the question just
Yeah.
becomes like, well, what do they want with Joshua? Like, what do they have to gain? Like, why do they have to kill Joshua, who's like Phoenix is dominant? Like, what's so special about Phoenix? What's so special about Joshua? Like, at the end of the day, why him and not Clive? Why is he the target? Oh, I just hit my knee on my desk. Oh, shit.
Ooh.
Oh, just start talking. Just start talking while
So,
well, yeah, go for it.
all right, let's see. So, one thing that I've been really curious about Joshua is that if he's a main character, because people were saying that he dies, what if he plays a bigger role in a story? Because so far, what we can tell, Clive main character, Jill main character, and they
Mm-hmm.
had Joshua listed as the main character for the longest. But if he presumably dies early on, that doesn't really make him a main character, right? So maybe we as the audience think he dies, but that's actually not what happens. And he ends up being having a bigger role in the story, and we see it like kind of happen maybe in the background. Like there's this hooded guy that randomly appears, but my understanding of storytelling is that when you don't directly show a character and you hide their face, that means they're either a really important character that you're not supposed to see, or something else is going on. Maybe because like I've watched Naruto and they hid away this man Toby, and it's to the point where everyone's like, wait, it could be this person. It's like 1,000 names, but the most obvious one was considered once, and then when it was announced, everyone's like, "Bro, that's so corny," but it got everybody talking. So it could be a situation where it's like so obvious that we don't consider it to be Joshua, or maybe it's so away from him and it's someone else, but still, why hide a character if it's not someone that we know? So
That's a great
that's what
question.
I like to think that.
No, that's a great question. It's a good point. Why hide a character if it's somebody that we know? Um, but
'Cause
go ahead.
I'm sure, like, just to bring Kingdom Hearts into it, like, characters have been hidden, like, remember in KH2 where you had Riku helping Sora throughout Kingdom Hearts 2,
Mm-hmm.
but he had the hood up and we never knew who it was,
Right.
and then you finally get revealed it's Riku who got transformed into Ansem, and you're like, "Oh," like, it wasn't like a giant reveal, but still, he was hidden from
Right.
Sora and from us. And you only then find out if you played 358 over 2, which came out after KH2.
Mm-hmm.
So this is what I kind of think about. Did
Yeah.
your knee? I was about to say, did your knee heal?
Yeah. No, we're feeling bad. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I still feel uh,
Yeah.
an after sting, I suppose we could say. But we're gonna be all right. I'll be able to hobble to bed, just fine. Yeah, Ultimate and Beast. It is a Final Fantasy stream. You literally showed up for like the only 3 seconds Kingdom Hearts has been brought up in the last hour, but that maybe that's just a sign of your presence, Ultimate and Beast. Maybe it's just a sign of your presence. We are coming up on an hour, so we could, if anybody in the chat has any questions for us or any ideas based off the the stuff we've been talking about here. I'm trying to think up if there's anything that I wanted to bring up that we haven't discussed yet. And I know I'm missing a thing or two. Do you have anything that you came in with that you wanted to say that we haven't brought up yet?
Let's see. So I kind of had this question, and I mean not question, but I had this thought. So there's kind of like this thing, since 16 is releasing in the same fiscal year as 7. A lot of people have had opinions in regards to that. One of my opinions was is that le- while I've had, mixed feelings about 16, one thing that I think will happen is that I think this game is gonna sell pretty like a lot of numbers. I think it's gonna sell like close to 10 million, if not
Yeah.
more.
The
And
honestly, and this is what I like about the ballsy move. Sorry to interrupt you, but them rating it M, it'll be interesting to see if that helps or hurts sales. But I love the ballsy move of just not caring.
yeah, and so I pretty much was saying that I think 16 does really well, but then when 7 Rebirth kind of gets its time to shine at the current moment, because we don't know the true sales of 7 Remake and Integrate and the Steam versions, everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
If let's just say it doesn't do as well, is it because like the people who enjoyed 16 were like, seven's not like this? But you did mention earlier that they'll have like two distinct play styles where one will have party members and you can switch back and forth, and it was a really good battle system. And then you have 16, which has more of the single player vibes to it. So I'm guessing it's like my concern was, will people prefer one play style over the other? And then when they see like, oh, Final Fantasy isn't like this for the other game, will it turn them off, or will they give it a chance since Final Fantasy, one of them gave them like a really good experience? So
Mm-hmm.
that was something that I kind of spoke about, and some people are like, no, it'll be fine. And then other people are like, it's not going to come out in the same fiscal year, but
I mean, it'll be close. I think there's probably a chance if Rebirth doesn't get released late 23, it'll be early 24. Um, but I don't think Square really minds at the end of the day. I mean, if Game Freak can drop 2 Pokemon games a year, like Square
oh
can drop
yeah,
2 Final Fantasies, they'll be just fine. They'll be
yeah,
just fine. Screw, you know that meme Scrooge McDuck duck just like diving through the money, diving through the cash. That's Square Enix releasing 2 like mainline Final Fantasy games in 1 year. They'll make loads of cash. But I could see both games, 16 and Rebirth, selling 10 billion copies. I think it'll be a little harder for Rebirth because with
yeah,
16, the consumer knows, hey, if I buy this game, I get to start at square one. And even though Square is telling you, oh yeah, Rebirth could be your first Final Fantasy game ever, don't worry about it. There are a lot of people that are going to be intimidated by the fact that it's like, wait, I got to play Remake first, but this is also a sequel to the OG compilation, and there's this Crisis Core remaster, and there's this, and I understand why someone would be really intimidated by the 7 trilogy right now, as opposed
yeah,
to 16, which is just like, hey, $60 and it's the whole thing, as in the whole story. I'm not knocking Remake for splitting it up. I think it's the right thing to do, but it is an easier entry point when 16 is just saying, hey, you're going to start at square one, and when this game's over, you're going to know everything that everybody else knows. It's not going to be somebody on Reddit telling you don't know shit because you didn't play the flip phone game. You know, like, and that's appealing. That is appealing.
yeah. Somebody in the chat had asked the question. I think I'm reading this right. Question for Kai is very nice with the community post on your channel of Sephiroth with the drip suit almost being Turk or Vincent. So I'm not gonna lie to you. I was looking for a picture to post on the community tab, and I just searched up, I believe, Sephiroth on Google. I found that picture, I saved it, and then I posted it on there. I mean, like, Sephiroth, I don't know, I'm indifferent to Sephiroth. Like, I like Crisis Core from what I played so far really like makes his character likable. And remake and an original, it's like Sephiroth just seems like this real big douchebag.
He's too. He's very ethereal. He's very ethereal. I know what you mean by the big douchebag line because he's literally there just to egg you on, just to literally drive Cloud mad. But in Crisis Core, you do get to see the human side of him, and you kind of see how he became the monster he became. I do hope in Rebirth they give us a little more time with him. Like he can't just show up just to fuck with Cloud. Like it's gotta
Yeah.
give me a scene where like he could even be having a self monologue. I don't know. Give me something to chew on that isn't him trying to get under Cloud's skin. Stilette Lorray in the chat says, I hope it lets you choose gore levels, and continues, that's one thing I really liked about Assassin's Creed Valhalla. I'm not a gore fan, so it was cool it gave you the choice. You know, that is cool. Anytime you give the player options, I'm all for it. You know, obviously, so long as giving the player those options doesn't dilute the experience. But yeah, I guess giving people the choice of what level of gore you want to see can be beneficial.
Yeah, because they've done that in video games. I don't know if you ever played Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, but
Yeah,
there's a
yeah, dude. I had my time with that game when I was young.
yeah, so there's a mission in that game that's so gory that they actually like give you the option to skip it, or
Wow.
was it like turn down the goriness of it? But so definitely if they give you the option to tone down the blood or anything, I'm sure people will appreciate that. Me, I'm keeping the option on.
I'm gonna turn it all the way up. I'm gonna turn it all the way up. I want blood. I want 3D glasses and the blood coming out of my screen. Let's do it. And I think Final Fantasy was actually, like, believe it or not, that's one of the things FF7 was one of the first games to really do. Like, don't get me wrong, FF7 is not the first game to feature blood, but it is the first Final Fantasy game to feature blood. If I'm not mistaken, somebody please feel free to correct me on that. Eric the Dude is in the chat, says, what up, Landy? Love your streams, bro. Always good time in here. Hyped as hell for Final Fantasy 16. Can't wait for June. Yeah, it still feels kind of surreal that it's that close. He also continues, shout out to Kai the player as well. Y'all both make great content. Well, thank you, Eric. Yeah, man, dude, June is right around the corner.
Appreciate.
Oh man, different strokes for different folks. As to like, yeah, you know, and I guess that's one of the things that's cool about options. I'm still amazed. They have these like, some of these games have these accessibility options now, where like if you could only see like one color, it can help, or stuff like that, or like if you can only see out of your periphery vision, they have modes that help you. Stuff like that just always amazes me. Just a Waffle says, another question for Landy Lodge. You played FF12, right? What was your first gameplay? I guess maybe what was your first experience getting knocked out by the dinosaur T-Rex? I think I know what you're talking about. The monster in the open world? Are you talking about a particular boss? Because then maybe I'm not familiar. But I fought a few dinosaur-looking dudes in the freaking wild and got my ass whooped. I can tell you that. But I don't know. Have you ever played FF12, Kai?
I haven't. It's one of those games on my list that I do need to play.
Yeah, it's pretty good. It's one of those, it's going to fall in the middle, maybe like low middle. Still a good game. I don't want to knock 12. It's still a really good game. It's just, I don't even think it would be in my top 10, but that's just me. Danowitz says, I'm happy 16 is making the summons part of the plot. That has not happened since 9 and 10. Yeah, we were discussing that a little bit earlier, that the summons really, I mean, 14 does it, but they're definitely more antagonistic and pretty, I don't want to say oversaturated, but there's a lot of primals, let's just put it that way. But yeah, I'm excited to see that. With 16. I don't know, what summon are you looking forward to seeing the most that we haven't seen yet, Kai?
So I think we've seen him, but Bahamut and maybe more of Odin, because actually, see, this is hard. So when it comes to the summonings, I would say that it's hard to say if I have a favorite, but Bahamut is like the one that I probably want to see more of. Maybe Shiva and the Ramu. I can't say his name right, but Ramu.
Ramu. I think it's actually just
Ramu.
Ramu. Yeah.
Okay. Those are the ones I want to see the most of, and ironically, 2 of the 3 is in the party with Clive. So we're definitely gonna see more of them.
I think so too. Eric the Dude has a great comment I want to expand on here. It says, I want to see Leviathan, man. I feel like it's weird they haven't shown it on purpose. Maybe there's something spoilery around its role in the game. Here's my theory, Eric the Dude. So, like, mythologically speaking, the Leviathan, it represents the social contract between people and their rulers, right? Like, there's a social contract of like, okay, you're going to protect me from the chaos of the world. I'm going to give up X, Y, and Z in exchange. You know, I'm going to give up X amount of my money. I'm going to give up X amount of rights. It's a social contract that we all, at the end of the day, get roped into. And that's typically what the Leviathan represents. And, you know, Kai, you were talking about this earlier, that there's a lot of political implications in these trailers, to the point it looks like that the politics of this world specifically are really going to come into play. And I wonder if Eric the Dude, if maybe that's why they haven't shown the Leviathan yet, because they want to maybe reserve that to maybe have it represent that in this game. I don't know. That's just my crackpot theory off the top of my head. I see Kyora's here. How are you, Kyora? Thanks for jumping in. And Stilet says FF12 best game just by having Fran. You know, Fran is a great character, and I got to be honest, I spent the first half of the game not really feeling it. Like, she was cool, but I didn't really feel it. But then we went to the wood. And when we went to the wood, she became probably my favorite character in that game. But that's enough of FF12. But, you know, there is something encouraging. If I'm not mistaken, you know, Kai or the chat, maybe you can correct me on this. But the people making FF16, there is a pocket of them that were involved in FF12, if I'm not mistaken. Like, I know FF14 is involved. Like, there's a lot of people from the FF14 team on this. But if I'm not mistaken, a lot of people from the FF14 team came from FF12. But I don't know that particularly. Or specifically.
I think I heard that, and people have said it, that people who worked on that game, I think they even said some of the people that worked on the tactics game. I'm like, dang, they got like I know I'm gonna sound like a Nomura fanboy when I say this, but like, I was kind of hoping that Tetsuya Nomura had chipped in with some helping with 16 in some ways too.
Honestly, with the way Yoshi P talks about him, I'm sure Yoshi P would have loved to have him on. But I think that dude is the busiest man in the company, and he probably just doesn't have the time. You know, I mean, between the next Kingdom Hearts arc and the remake trilogy, and the fact that he wants to make Verum Rex after Kingdom Hearts 4, that dude, I just hope he's sleeping, man. I just hope he gets some sleep. But, you know, I'm with you, man, where it's like, at least as far as the Final Fantasy brand goes, it's really Nomura and Creative Business Unit 1. Those are really the games and the vibe and the art style that I gravitate towards. But that's all the more reason I feel like FF16 is important, because part of what makes Final Fantasy so great is that it could be anything to a certain extent. Like, any Final Fantasy game could be its own unique thing. But if every Final Fantasy game is just going to try and emulate Creative Business Unit 1 or Nomura,
that would get boring.
It gets boring. I think that's why 15 suffered a little bit, because it was not them, but trying to emulate their style. So it just fell a little flat. Okay, I see it's blowing up here. What's going on? Will's Word and William Robinson. Kyora says, I'm not sure, but I wouldn't be surprised at that because of how similar FF12's combat system is to an MMO. Yeah, I know the 12 team definitely moved on to 14. There's also way too many 12 references in 14, which make me think that we may see some 12 or 14 references in 16. Sun Lion says the good thing about FF12 was its open zoned areas. Yes, I did find myself really appreciating that. Eric the Dude says, I've always wanted to play FF14, but I've been put off by the MMO aspect of it. But love how everyone that plays it seems to love it. Hyped to see what the FF14 team can bring to a single player in 16. Well, I'll say this. It's an RPG first. It's an MMO second. But I'll say this. You're going to see, I'm calling it right now. After FF16 comes out, you're going to see a giant wave of people jumping into FF14. I guarantee it. Look, here, I'm going to call my shot. We got Kai the player here, and we got Eric the Dude in the chat. Neither one of you have played through 14, but it both sounds like you're going to play 16. I guarantee at least one of you hops into 14 after 16. I'll put it down. I'll bet on that. But yeah, that's I don't know. Can you see something like that going down? Can you see like if 16 is a big success that a lot of people who enjoyed that game might flock to FF14?
So if what I think will happen is that if 16 is really successful, I think not only 14 but some of the other Final Fantasy games will see a spike. Even if it's a small spike, they'll see a spike because then by time 16 comes out, you'll have access to the Pixel remasters. You'll have 7 remake. You'll at some point anticipate 7 rebirth. You have 8 on the current consoles. You have 9 on the current consoles, 10 on the current consoles. 11's the only one not, but you have 12. And then, PC, you have 13. And then, of course, you have 14. And then you have 15. So after that game, people are going to definitely want more of that story. So they'll go to the first one that has the similar writer, so 14, but then they're also going to want to experience some of the other Final Fantasy games. I
Yeah,
could see that happening.
I could see it happening for sure. And like anytime you can bring new fans into Final Fantasy, I think is a good thing. What I would like to see, I don't want to just see 16 bring in new fans. I'd like to see some jaded Final Fantasy fans almost like be like have hope in the series again. Because I actually think overall, even people who enjoy remake like myself, at least before 16 started really looking good, I feel like we're pessimistic about the Final Fantasy series. Like I feel like when 16 first dropped, a lot of people's impression were just like, so what is Final Fantasy? What is it supposed to be? Like I feel like a lot of people were just thrown and were like, so what are we doing here? What is it supposed to be? What direction are we going in? And the fact that we didn't even know if there was going to be a party, but a lot's changed since then. And I wonder if it can do the masterful achievement of bringing in new fans but satisfying the old ones. That's a tough thing to do. I think Kingdom Hearts 3 tried to do that and in some ways succeeded with it, in some ways didn't. But it's tough to try and again draw in new fans while simultaneously pleasing the old ones. But we'll see. I mean, dude, there's a lot of people that have only played Final Fantasy 14, right? They're just MMO fans and they were sick of World of Warcraft or they were sick of RuneScape or whatever else freaking MMOs exist out there now. Again, I'm not an MMO guy as much as I love 14, but it makes me wonder if they're trying to appeal to that crowd too. If they're like, hey, look, we got this whole fan base of 14, this whole pocket that just got here. I'd be interested in seeing how the audience translates from 14 to 16. Which let me check. How many active players does Final Fantasy 14 have right now? Because depending on that answer, let's see. Okay, it's currently averaging 30,000 players each day, 40,000 on the weekend. So 30 to 40,000 people a day are logging in. That's kind of nuts.
Whole country.
Yeah, and then Realm Reborn is estimated to have 1,164,000 players per day this month. When did this drop? Oh my goodness. Yeah, no, this is recent. Okay, and wow. Okay. So when you consider something like that, that's a big audience to draw from. Total game. Okay, here we go. This is what I was looking for. Final Fantasy IV, as of April 5th, 2021, and a lot has changed since then, mind you. But as of April 5th, 2021, Final Fantasy XIV's player count hit 22 million. Ooh. Imagine you sold 22 million copies of a mainline Final Fantasy game.
Oh.
Whoa.
That's huge numbers.
And you know what I'm curious about now? What all the sales for Final Fantasy games are.
I know they released that number, like the total number.
Okay, I'm looking at it right now. 7 is the runaway winner at 18, basically 18.5 million units sold. So if they successfully translate that FF14 fan base into 16, we might be looking at the best-selling Final Fantasy of all time.
Yeah.
Wow. That is interesting. And okay, so I don't know how this works, but with Final Fantasy having 22 million players, 11 million FF14 is like 11 million is considered the sales somehow.
Yeah.
Maybe like every account averages 2 players, I guess. Maybe it's something like that. I don't know. But okay, so we're looking at 11 million for FF14. I don't know. It's interesting. I'd like to see that shattered. I mean, FF15 sold 10 million copies, and that was a little bit mixed reception. I'd be interested in
Yeah.
seeing what happens, how many they sell if they have like an overwhelmingly positive reception. Oh
Hmm.
my lord.
And then I wonder if the reception of 16 is so good, will they shorten the time between 16 and Final Fantasy 17? Because if it took 7 years between the mainline release, I wonder if it's going to take as long, or
Mm,
are they going to shorten the time frame?
I don't know. I want to be optimistic and say shorten, but I don't know.
And
Uh,
then you got the conclusion to 7 remake, and then you have other Final Fantasy games that could come out.
mm-hmm.
Uh it's not fair. It's a
Yeah,
lot.
it's a lot. It's a lot to keep up with, and the fact that Verum Rex is essentially, if slash when they make that game, will essentially
Yeah.
be an unofficial Final Fantasy game at the end of the day. But I
Yeah.
know they're not allowed to outright say that. Um,
Yeah.
but let's get to the chat here. Eric the Dude says, I definitely could see a new wave coming to 14 if 16 does well. I really hope 16 becomes a word of mouth game that everyone wants to play after it comes out, like Elden Ring and God of War Ragnarok. I feel like a lot of the time you have to release the game right place, right time. Like I think Elden Ring was going to blow up no matter what. I think no matter what,
Yeah.
Elden Ring was going to blow up.
The
Um,
anticipation.
Exactly. However, God of War Ragnarok is one of those games that I feel like just dropped at the right time. Like, while everyone was bitching about Pokemon, God of War Ragnarok was like a shining city on a hill.
Yup.
So if it could catch that perfect wave, if it comes out at the right time, I think it really could be one of those word of mouth games and could even be a game of the year candidate. Not that that means anything anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, Just a Waffle says, last question. If you played FF11 and 14, do you remember the super boss called Absolute Virtue? I do not. Maybe that's an 11 boss, but I don't remember seeing anything like that in 14. Then here, you could vibe with this, Kai. Zadanowitz says 9 is the last time I loved a mainline game. Wow. That's a long time
So,
ago.
oh man, I know when I first played it, it was like he has a tail just like Goku, and then he turns Super Saiyan just like Goku. That was
Yeah.
that was child me just thinking that, and then as I played it, I was like, wow, there's a lot of stuff going on in this game. Kid me never thought this game looked childish. That's why whenever people kind of like,
I
sometimes
hate
use
that. I
those
hate that.
adjectives, I'm like, I was a child and I never looked at it. Like I played a little bit of 7. I thought that was some of the best graphics ever. And then when you get older and your graphics get better, you realize, okay, maybe not. I played
Mm-hmm.
9, thought they was some of the best graphics for like period. Get older, I'm like, it wasn't bad, but you could still play 9. But then, I have my talks about if they ever made a remake, and everyone has their opinions about the looks, and I'm just indifferent. Like, you know what? I'm not gonna argue. So
Well, that's what I do. I think it'd be a crime to give 9 a fresh coat of paint because I just don't think it needs
yeah,
it. I think FF9 to this day still looks good. It's
yeah.
more playable than FF7 and FF8. Like
Hmm.
out of all the whole PlayStation 1 era, as far as gameplay and presentation goes, FF9 definitely aged the best in my opinion.
Yeah.
Kyora says I'm especially interested in how dark FF16 is going to go, considering this is the first mainline FF game to be rated M. Yeah, we talked about that a little bit earlier. I'm really, I like that. they're not going to have any restrictions on what they can do creatively, right? This is not. Well, I love anything that doesn't. How do I put it? It's exciting that they have no desire to appeal to the lowest common denominator. If
Yeah.
that makes sense, that excites me. That they're like, no, we're gonna create the game and story we want, even if it boxes out 50% of the gaming population. There's something about that I really like.
Yeah. It's like they'll be able to tell the story they want without having to like restrict anything, which is dope. Because sometimes when you restrict things, it could hurt and it
Mm-hmm.
becomes a issue where like, okay, well, did you want to say it like this or did you want to say it like that? Because definitely I'm a-okay with it not having a huge restriction.
Yeah, I would say so. I would say so. Let's see. The Hidden One, Sage of the Lodge, says, I'm one of those players playing right now. That's because you're based. FF14 is where it's at. Bless you. Uh,
That was a cough,
that was a
I'm
cough.
sorry.
Well, I mean, still.
Yeah, thanks.
I wish you well. Yoshi Peach, I said that like you were gonna like die. Don't take that the wrong way. Sun Lion says Yoshi P chose action-based RPG over turn-based, looking at today's demographics. And let me tell you, man, you could still make awesome turn-based combat. Turn-based combat is not a thing of the past. It is not a restrictive gameplay. It's strategy-based. I don't know. I think there's still room for turn-based combat in the world. Do you have an opinion on that, Kai?
So I've actually I talked about this.
Mm-hmm.
So my thoughts were is that me as a player, I like turn based. I won't have a problem with it ever. Some of the like most of the games I played within the last 2 years plus during the pandemic, most of them were turn based or
Mm-hmm.
JRPGs. But I do notice something. A lot of the younger generation and even people just a tad bit younger than me, they're not really playing the turn-based games outside of the Pokemon, the
Yep.
Personas. So like I'll be like, "Hey, you guys know what Final Fantasy is?" No. I'm like, "What? Final Fantasy
Damn.
like older than this. You know what that is beyond this?" I'll be like, "You play it?" No. And I'm not saying that turn based is like a like stopping them, but I've noticed that if you didn't grow up with it, it's a bit harder to convince somebody to play it
That's a good point.
versus if they grew up around it, then they're more inclined to play it. And like I like using Kingdom Hearts as an example. I like Kingdom Hearts combat, but like at the same time, I like the turn-based combat. I guess it's like a situation kind of thing, but also I can see how it's utilized to perhaps get the younger generation or at least people who more skeptical to try out. So 60 like part of me would want to say that if 16 was turn based, it still wouldn't be a bad game. Like it still would sell pretty good, but I think it being action based opens it up for the possibility of more fans of the old games as well as fans like that aren't fans yet of playing the games. Perhaps there's people who play the MMOs or people who don't even play Final Fantasy. They see this game and they're getting really excited, like, you know what? I'm gonna try this game out no matter what. So, like for me, turn based has its role, but I've played a couple and I'm like, this would have just been better if it was an action-based game. Like there was a fairy tale game that came out on the consoles back in 2020. I played the whole game, and one of the things that sucked about it is that the turn-based really kind of ruined the presentation of how the anime was.
Mm,
Anime's action, action, and then
that's a good point.
the turn-based in this game, it wasn't on the standard of Final Fantasy. It was much more. It was like a wait turnstile, not even an action time battle. So it didn't feel like you were in a true action scene. It just felt like, all right, well, you could sit here all day and figure out what you're gonna do next, and it wasn't even hard. So I feel like a lot has to go into a turn-based game to make it really good versus an action-based game. I'm not saying you can be lazy, but you don't have to put like your hard work, sweat, and tears into it on the same level to make it good.
I get, or at the very least, like from a marketing perspective, you don't have to go as hard to try and appeal to a large audience. A lot of the turn-based that's coming out now, I saw somebody in the chats talking about how Pokemon's really an outlier for this stuff. Turn-based now is something that's like niche, right? Like you buy Octopath Traveler because it's pixel art in turn-based like the old days.
Yeah.
I almost feel like turn-based, unfortunately, is kind of just getting roped into like old school gaming, and we're really reliant on in my opinion, it appears to me we are reliant on the Persona series to convince everyone that there's still room for turn-based
Yeah.
combat in this world. Because honestly, after playing Persona 5 Royal, that's what made me a believer. I'm not gonna lie, I used to kind of think maybe turn-based was a thing of the past, but after playing Persona 5, I was like, no freaking way, man. I don't want this to go anywhere. But yeah, Sunlion says a lot of things in Remake were censored because of it being rated T. Yeah, we talked about how the original FF7 was the first Final Fantasy to have blood, and then in Remake there was no blood. Like instead of following Sephiroth's blood trail, it's now like Genova juice on the floor. Which, as someone who loved Remake, I absolutely hated that. Put the blood on the floor. You could still get it rated T. Bribe who you need to bribe. Make it happen. Eric the Dude says, I prefer action-based hack and slash games through and through. That being said, I love turn-based games as well. Persona 5 Royal is beautiful, and I love the OG turn-based FF games. Yeah, I pretty much would just echo that whole sentiment. I don't know, like, what about you, Kai? Do you have a problem going back to turn-based, or is that something that's always going to be appealing and compatible with you?
I don't have a problem. I can play turn based. I can play action based. It as long as like it has a decent story, I can get past. Like I remember I was playing Breath of the Wild on a Nintendo Switch online, and that game came out I think even before I was born. And so, and that's a turn based game. I was playing that just fine. So I'm sure I can even play some of the old Final Fantasies, and I'll be fine with it.
I feel that way too. There's something, I don't know, there's something relaxing about turn-based, at least when it's not action, like an action time meter. But I don't know, I don't know, maybe it's because like the first game I technically ever learned was chess. So like anything that's strategy-based feels like home in a weird way, which is why like I tried out the Fire Emblem series for the first time with 3 houses, and now like I'm buying the new one on day one, so I don't know. Anything strategy based like that, really, I personally find appealing. Stilette is the one who said Pokemon is the outlier on turn based like that. Ultimate and B says, I don't have a PS5, so I'll have a lot of fun watching you guys play 16. Well, hopefully you can get your paws on one soon. Eric the Dude says, if I recall, the only blood that was shown in Remake was in the Integrate DLC at the end with Yuffie. And, hopefully that's a sign that we see blood in Rebirth. I don't know, do you have a particular opinion on that? Are you itching to see blood in the Remake trilogy, or do you really just not care?
For me, I'm not really like super critical with them adding blood or not. It would be nice because it does ruin. Like, I think Chainsaw Man, just to deviate real quick, they edited it so instead of having blood, they changed the color of the blood, and it just makes it accidentally more disturbing.
Yeah, I guess that's just not, that's
Yeah.
weird. That's weird to me.
Yeah. So like if they're gonna change it, hopefully they're conscious of the color. But outside of that, I mean, if they change it, I'll live.
Yeah, I mean, look, again, I'm not married to the idea. I would just prefer it there.
Yeah.
Zdanowitz says, I just started Triangle Strategy. I still love pixel art games. Me too. I want to play Octopath. That's a game I haven't played. Are there any pixel art games you have your eye on? I want to play Live Alive too. I really like that demo.
I still want to play Tactics Ogre and
There you
the Triangle Strategy. Check those out.
Justin Waffle says, Genova Juice. I wonder if Shinner will steal the Landy Lodge's idea for a product and create Genova Juice.
Ooh.
Do it. I'll drink some Genova Juice. Give me that, baby. M.A. Maria says, turn-based RPGs are my bread and butter. Love them. Yeah, baby. That's what we're talking about. Will's World says, what Final Fantasy would you recommend? My brain is a fine soup right now. Honestly, I'd recommend Remake if you haven't played it. I think Final Fantasy VII Remake is a great place to start. It depends what you like, Will. Okay, here we go. Will, what sounds best to you? Turn-based combat, action combat, or MMO? Answer that question and I'll recommend a Final Fantasy for you. Let's see. Princess Kyora says Final Fantasy X had the best implementation of turn-based combat, in my opinion. As far as the Final Fantasy series goes, I would agree with you. What do you think, Kai?
I played 10. It was hard, and some of those boss battles, I had to search up how to cheese it. Even though it was a wait and go game, it still
Yeah.
was hard.
Yeah, of
And
course.
comparing it to Fairy Tale, Fairy Tale really didn't take strategy to win. This game took strategy to win. FF10, like that, I don't know. I just really liked it in terms of like its combat. Um, and it wasn't exactly just a simple, all right, you press a button, you win type of combat. It was more like you got to think about your actions ahead of time, or else you will suffer.
Okay. Okay. I mean, that to me sounds like my bread and butter. Sunline says, I think the reason why they're slowly increasing the graphics is because of the intensity and high use of performance on the kaiju fights. And God of War 3 like boss fights, and this game will have a massive scope. I believe Sunline's talking about 16, and that would make sense that maybe because the graphics really are going to take a while to really polish is because of how much needs to go into those kaiju fights. I guess that would make sense to me. Princess Kyora says, I want blood in Kingdom Hearts. Come on, Square. Fuck it, why not? Give me the gore meter. Imagine you boot up Kingdom Hearts 4 and there's a gore meter. Could you imagine? Just the Waffle says, oh man, if we see Blood Sephiroth talking about the air. Well, you know what's interesting is the Aerith scene, there was never any blood. That's what's so weird about the OG FF7 and the whole blood thing. Kevin Ribeiro says, would you consider Shin Megami Tensei? I have. What's the one they remastered for Switch? I have Shin Megami Tensei 3. I want to give it a shot, but it's so far down the backlog. But you know, maybe when I'm an old man. I don't know. Kai, have you ever played SMT?
No. Which company makes those games?
Atlas, same as Persona.
Everyone's probably gonna hate me now when I say this. So back in the day on the Wii, there was this game that Atlas had made called Trauma Center. You're a doctor, you do your thing, yeah, right? But for some odd reason, that game traumatized me very badly. So every time I see art that reminds me of that game, I don't know, it just weirds me out. So the Atlas games I've been kind of staying away from it. Yes, that includes Persona.
Hey, to each their own, dude. To each their own.
Eventually, I'll let go of it and I'll get into the games. I told a friend I would check out Persona 5 eventually.
They can be trippy and creepy, dude. I'll tell you that. The trippiness and creepiness will definitely persevere. Princess Kyora types in all caps, yo, Trauma Center. Yeah, welcome to the Trauma Lodge. Will's Word says, looking for turn-based for now. We'll be covering 14 in the future. Also grew up playing chess. Either Final Fantasy X or Final Fantasy IX. One of those two will be perfect for you, Will. If you play 10 or 9 and you like turn-based, that's what I'd recommend. I don't know, Kai, if you want to throw those out, throw any suggestions out.
I would say 9, and not to be the fanboy, but honestly, I'll check out 7 too.
I would check out 7. Map exploration for me in OG7 has not aged very well, so I think I'm not sure it's the best place to start. That's just I like 10 and 9 because they still play very well to this day, and they still look very good to this day. Stilet says blood has no place in Kingdom Hearts, in my opinion. Of course it doesn't. Of course it doesn't. We're just being silly. I wouldn't want blood in Kingdom Hearts. It would ruin the whole aesthetic. I mean, unless you kept it to like a Cloud and Sephiroth fight, then maybe I'll give you the pass. Kevin says, to each their own. I love JRPGs in general. I played all from Final Fantasy to Shin Megami Tensei. Yeah, like 95% of what I consume media-wise comes out of Japan. So 99% of the RPGs I play are JRPGs, and like 90% of what I watch is freaking anime, if I'm just being honest.
Yeah.
I've played the whole series just trying to find out which to replay and really invest in. Then go for 10 or 9, just because 9 is likely to get a remake at this point, and 10 is just, in my opinion, I think you could argue 10 is the best Final Fantasy. Just if you consider them, if you're judging them in the time they were released, you know what I mean? I think Remake is a better game than Final Fantasy X, but if you judge Remake by if you compare Remake to Final Fantasy X in the year it came out, I think the judgment gets a little more fuzzy then. But I'll leave it at that. All right, so we are coming up on an hour 40 now. That is crazy. Kai, is there anything we haven't discussed yet that you might want to? Or do you think we covered all the bases?
I think we might have covered all the bases.
Well then, without further ado, Kai, where can the people find you?
So I spend a lot of time on YouTube. If you just search up Kai the player,
I'm gonna drop it in the chat right now. They
yeah.
won't even have to search it. I went and got the link for you guys. Get in there. Give your boy a sub. But go on.
So I've been uploading 7. I'll make an occasional Kingdom Hearts video. Sometimes I'll throw a theory out there in regards to Kingdom Hearts, and then other times I might even be talking about the rumored Final Fantasy IX remake game.
Rumored? No, it's a sure thing. It's a sure thing. It has to be. But yeah, guys, make sure you follow Kai the Player. He's a great channel over on YouTube. Uploads amazing content. We'll keep you in the loop on everything, especially if you want to keep tabs on the FF9 remake. I guarantee you he'll be the first one to cover it. Stilette, to answer your question, I guess we'll leave off on this. Did we cover if there will be Viera at FF16? We did not, but I'd have some confidence Yoshi P likely will. He loves his bunny people. But without further ado, we are going to wrap this one up. If you're hanging out on Twitch, please hang out for the raid. We're going to raid Mr. Juan up. Let's just type him in here. And, dude, Kai the Player, dude, thanks so much for doing this, man. Always enjoy talking to you. And thanks for hanging out in the lodge, dude.
Awesome sauce. Thanks for having me.
Always a pleasure, my man. And until next time, we'll see you sickos later.